Welcome, everyone. My name is Brittany Todd. I'm a member of the Fabric Leadership Team. Thank you all for joining us today for the first installment in our Mastering Fabric Tips and Tricks webinar series led by Paul Ruth on the topic of introducing Tailscale. Before we begin, I would like to share a few housekeeping items. Can you move to the next slide, please? The webinar will include a live question and answer session following the presentation. Please note that the chat feature has been disabled. If at any point you have a question, please type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll answer it during the Q&A session. If you haven't already, please submit your Fabric matrix to the Fabric team via the form that will be linked in the follow-up email. We utilize these Fabric matrices to brag about your experiments in our presentations on our website and to our NSF program officer. Last, this webinar is being recorded and will be shared with all registrants. Next slide, please. We are joined today by our presenter, Paul Ruth. Paul Ruth is the lead principal investigator of Fabric. He has extensive experience with Tailscale, a secure network infrastructure service, and is adept at setting up experiments in various test beds. At this point, I'll pass it over to you, Paul.
Mute. All right, and I am here. Okay, so today, so thank you for the introduction, Brittany. Today we are going to go over some tips and tricks on how to use Fabric to the best of your ability. And we're going to identify a problem that a lot of people have in trying to manage their Fabric slices. So the roadmap for today, we're going to review a little bit about what the Fabric management network is and how it works, how people tend to use it, some of its limitations and security mechanisms. Review a little bit of traditional VPNs or virtual private networks, and introduce this new idea of a private mesh VPN that I think will be a tool that you'll want to use with Fabric. We'll move on. Hopefully there'll be a lot of time left for a demo / hands-on part. You can feel free to follow along today if you can. If you can't, the video will be available later, and the Jupyter notebook that I show will be in the Jupyter Hub, so you'll be able to do this on your own later as well. And in this hands-on demo, we're going to have you create your own Tailscale mesh VPN, directly access your Fabric slice using this VPN, deploy services in your Fabric slice that you can access from outside of Fabric via your VPN. And as a bonus demo, if we have time, I'm going to show you using Tailscale with both Chameleon and Fabric together. So if you have a slice that spans both of the test beds, you can show how Tailscale will work for that. So hopefully this will be pretty good here. Oops, good to go. So what are we talking about here? So we're talking about managing your slice. This isn't like what I'm talking about is using Tailscale as an experimental network to do experiments. I'm talking about how do you manage your slice from the outside. Typically what you want to do is you want to, some common things are running a terminal or a shell on your slice, on your VMs, run commands remotely. You're going to want to transfer files to and from your slice. These are things that some people find challenging given the security profile that Fabric has. And another thing that is really hard for a lot of people to do, and like sometimes even impossible, is to create services that are inside your slice that you can use to control your slice and manage your slice in your experiment. So a lot of times there's interactive GUIs or monitoring tools like Grafana. Maybe you have your own custom REST interface that you're using to control your slice. So these are the things that you're trying to do, and we're going to go over a little bit of the challenges of doing this on Fabric, and then I'm going to show you this Tailscale tool that will make a lot of it a lot simpler. Okay, so network service, insecure ones. These are the way a lot of people really would like to have the network services work, but they're too insecure for us. So I'm going to show you what we're talking about here. So traditionally, what you do is you take your virtual machines and you put your public IPs straight on the internet. So these are the management IP addresses that you're using to control your virtual machines. You still have the data plane down here that's completely separated and isolated, and you can do your experiment on the data plane. But what people really are hoping that to have, the easiest way to do this is to put public IPs straight on the management network, straight on the internet, and access them straight from your machine or Jupyter Hub or what have you. So this is great for you because you can get direct access with SSH. You can use any file transfer tool you want. You can put services on your VMs and serve it out to the internet. The problem is that external attackers have the exact same access as you do. And from all the test beds I've ever used, this is the most common way that the slices get hacked, that the test beds get hacked, is users putting services on the public internet, exposed to the internet, and having external attackers attack. It's because of this, we just don't allow it. Like our goal as Fabric is to have you have this data plane down here that's completely isolated and sandboxed from the external attackers, so that you can do really insecure or disruptive things on your data plane. And we just need to maintain this wall that keeps everyone out. So we just don't allow this. And a lot of people are struggling with figuring out how to make this work. Okay, so Fabric slice access, a little bit more secure, not super secure, but more secure than what we have been doing. So as experienced users of Fabric, you probably know that we require you to jump through a bastion host. You probably cursed every time you have to try to figure out how to do it, but you know that that's what has to happen. So how does this work? Well, the management network, your virtual machines have public IPs that are on the management network and face the internet, but there's firewalls there that prevent direct access to these VMs. So you just can't do it. You can, however, SSH to the bastion host, and then from the bastion host to your VM, and bounce through the bastion host to get connections. These connections are limited. The connections to the public IPs on the virtual machines are limited to being from the bastion host, and they're limited to only being SSH or its derivative SCP for file transfer. So this is great. It protects you. It allows you to have the shell access you need, although you have to jump through the bastion host. It allows you to do file transfer with SCP, but you have to jump through the bastion host. But it doesn't allow you to have services that are exposed to the internet at all. And that's just because that's the most insecure thing that the users typically ask for. It's great also, though, because it blocks the external attackers from getting access directly to your management network. And it also, because the external attackers don't have access to the bastion host, the external attackers are blocked as well. So the effect here is that you're protected from the outside world, but you have really complicated commands to get through the bastion host, and you still can't create direct services from your VMs that are exposed to the outside world. Right. So there's another way that we teach people how to do this. And it's to use the SSH tunnels via the bastion host to create encrypted tunnels between your external machine and the VMs inside your slice. So these are great. You can create these encrypted tunnels from your machine to your VMs. They transparently allow you to jump through the bastion host once you have them set up. Management tasks are easy. You can still SSH directly to your machine, although you have to SSH to your local port or local host at a specific port to get to a specific machine. You can use any file transfer protocol you want, although you have to use it via a local host interface and a specific port to get to the specific machine. And you can provide any service you want from your VM to the external machine, as long as that external machine is able to create SSH tunnels. And you go through the steps of creating that tunnel. It's also great because it still blocks the external attacker from getting to your management network and from getting to the bastion host. The effects of this is a little bit better. You can now SSH and use any transfer protocols you want, provide services to your external machine, but you have these really complicated commands to set up these SSH tunnels, and these services are only available to the machine that has where the other end of the SSH tunnel is. And you need to have a different SSH tunnel for not just every virtual machine, but every service on every virtual machine. So if you have a lot of services on a lot of machines, you need a separate tunnel for each one. Creating those and managing them, remembering which one goes where can be difficult. All right. So enter VPNs. So we're going to talk about private mesh VPNs, and they are sort of a derivative of VPNs that you may have used in the past. So you're probably familiar with VPNs, kind of like NordVPN and Surfshark and these kinds of things. These are not really what we're talking about. These are more tools for if you're in a coffee shop or an airport or a hotel and you don't really trust the local network, you can create a encrypted tunnel out of the untrusted area to somewhere you trust, and then get to the public internet. These private mesh VPNs are more like a VPN that your employer would have. So you might have your employer might have a VPN for the local network at the business or the university. And what you will do when you're at home is you'll turn on a VPN that'll create an encrypted tunnel from your house or your hotel, encrypted tunnel from your laptop at your house or hotel into your employer's domain. And then you can access all of the services that the employer has made available within the domain, and you can access it from your remote point of view without your employer putting those services on the public internet. So this is a really common way to do this. This is something that sort of has to happen these days because we just don't live in a world anymore where you can put services on the public internet without being an expert at protecting them and monitoring them and making sure you know how to keep everyone out, but also know how to watch to see if somebody did get in. And that takes a lot of expertise these days. So it's just better not to do it at all if you don't have to. So these private mesh VPNs are kind of cool. So they're starting to become popular here. And what they are is a way for you to create a VPN that is yours. It's sort of in the cloud, so to speak. And you can take machines anywhere on the internet and connect to it and form a little VPN that's kind of like the one that's at your employer. And then what you can do is connect your laptop or whatever device you're using to interface with it to that VPN, and you can access all of those services in an isolated way using encrypted tunnels and so forth. Most of these, including the ones we're going to show at Tailscale, use something like WireGuard, so they're well known to be protected. The two most popular ones of these that I can tell are Tailscale and Zero Tier. They're more or less equivalent. We're going to show Tailscale today because it's pretty easy to set up. And it's the one I've been using, so I know a little bit about how to do it, and it's not too bad. So it's easy to set up. You end up not having any clunky commands. Once you set it up on your laptop, you can just leave it on. I have mine on just all the time, so I can just deploy virtual machines in Fabric and connect to them without even thinking about it. So that's what we're going to do, is show you how to set up a Tailscale mesh VPN in Fabric that you can connect your laptop to and then control your slides. So what does this look like? So back to the pictures. So we're going to deploy the VPN. It's kind of in the cloud. We're going to have all of your VMs are going to connect to that VPN in the cloud. They can talk to each other over that VPN. I wouldn't suggest using that management network for an experiment. You still want to use the data plane for your experiment, but you can use the VPN as a way to manage your experiment. And then you can connect your external laptop to the VPN, and now you can access all of your VMs in Fabric as if they were on your local network. It's really good for direct SSH connections. You can file transfer with any protocol. You can run whatever services you want on the VMs and then consume them from your laptop. And the external attacker is kept out of the management network, the bastion host, and the VPN all at the same time. And another bonus on Fabric is that with Tailscale, at least, this hides a lot of the complexities of IPv4 versus v6 on the management network, and it just handles all that for you in a transparent way. So this is pretty nice. Very quickly, we're going to go through. We're going to show you how to set up Tailscale. If you go to tailscale.com, you can see what it looks like. I'll walk you through it in a minute. Download, install Tailscale, configure it. We'll have to generate some keys and use them to connect your VMs to your network. Installing Tailscale is easy. You can do it on a Mac. You can do it on Windows. You can do it on Linux. I have a Mac right now. I've uninstalled Tailscale, so we're going to install it from scratch on my Mac. And then the machines that are in Fabric are Linux, so we'll show you how to install it on Linux. It's really simple. Show you how to configure Tailscale. There's a admin console in the website, and you can just see a list of all your machines that are connected. You can revoke their privileges or add new ones. It's pretty easy. You just have to become familiar with their console. There's a way to generate the keys. I'll show you how to do this. Later on, you can come back to these slides and use this to help yourself generate keys. and install them on your virtual machines, which if you see the tool when you install in Linux, it's basically you write one command to run this script and it just installs everything for you. So it's really good. And we're going to jump over and hopefully have time to show you all the things I want to show you. Oh, and then you connect the node to the mesh network. Okay, the demo and tutorial. This is the fun part. These slides out of the way. Okay, I'm just gonna move these over here so I don't have to like deal with them right now. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do for this tutorial is we're gonna just log into the portal like hopefully you all have a million times. This is a little bit of an advanced tutorial, so I'm assuming that you know mostly what you're doing here. So I'm logged into the portal as myself. I'm not gonna go over things in the portal. I'm just gonna quickly jump in here and launch the Jupyter Hub like many of you probably already have, right? So as this is coming up, if you've taken tutorials, Fabric tutorials before, you probably know it's about to happen. There's a Jupyter example notebook in the Jupyter Hub already for you that will walk you through how to do this. And I'm just going to show you how to do it in real time. And this should take a minute unless all of you are trying to do this at the same time, and then it'll take a few minutes. Okay, so now we're here. Close out some of these little warnings. You come over here, and if you look in the Jupyter examples main, open up the Start Here notebook, see the list of all the examples as usual. Come down here. There's a new one that was added called Tailscale Mesh VPN. Just go ahead and click that and open it up, right? We have this picture that was from the slides. You should be a little familiar with it. We're going to create this VPN, connect your VMs to it. They're all going to be on a data plane, and then we're going to connect your laptop to it. So the pre-requirements to this is you should have a little familiarity with Fabric, at least on the Hello Fabric tutorial, and then you need to install Tailscale on your laptop. Conveniently, if you click on this logo here, it'll open up Tailscale. Oops, I should go to the just Tailscale. Let's see. Just land on tailscale.com, and this is what you see when you land on Tailscale and you have not configured anything or logged in. The first thing to do here is go to download. So there's a button up here called download. You see this picture that was in some of the slides. You can install Tailscale on any of these operating systems. So you can install it on your Android phone if you want, or Linux or Windows or your Apple phone or a Mac. So just pick the one that is yours and go ahead and download it. So I'm going to pick Mac, click download. Obviously, this is not going to download anything. It's just going to kick me off to the App Store. And now I can get the App Store from the Apple App Store, which I could have just gone straight to the App Store and searched for it there. But I wanted to show you how to find your operating system. So I'm going to go ahead and download Tailscale from the App Store. I'll close this window here. And then now I have downloaded Tailscale from the App Store. I'm just going to click Open. And it's going to run Tailscale. And all it did is it added this little logo up here that's on my toolbar. So at this point, I can get rid of my App Store, and I can click here, and you can see I have Tailscale installed, but it's not connected. So if I go and I just try to turn it on, it'll try to log me in. Whoops. And I'm trying to log me in, but it doesn't know who I'm supposed to be logged in as yet. So Tailscale works sort of like Fabric does, in that there's no Tailscale account per se, but you can use any of these identity providers. So for my own personal use, I use a Google identity, but I use that for lots of things from my personal use, my house, and things like that. So for this purpose, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to sign up with GitHub. It works just as well as if you use Google. You can choose any of these that you want. So I'm going to sign in with get my GitHub account. It just knows who I am because I'm already signed in. I will authorize Tailscale to use my GitHub account. You can see Chameleon uses Tailscale for a few other things, and since I'm associated with that project, I could join that, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to join the Tailscale, my private Tailscale VPN that was created for my GitHub account. So just here, click connect. Now it says login successful. I get a little warning up here that they have notifications. If I click up here, you can see I'm logged in as Paul Ruth at GitHub, and I have an IP address and a name here. And it giving me this little introduction set of slides that I can go through. And if you want to, you can learn about it. I'm going to go here and skip the introduction because I kind of know what I'm doing. Come over here to machines. This is the default admin console for my Tailscale VPN that I just created. I currently have one machine on it. It's called Rency dash some weird strange number. I can show you here. If I open a terminal window and bring it over here, that name right there is actually the name of my laptop as created by the IT folks at Rency. So whatever your laptop's name is, there will be right here, say how it's logged in. This IP address is the IP address of my laptop, but on my VPN. And it says it's connected and some versions and things like that. Okay, so it's good. So I now have my VPN, but I only have one machine on it, and it's my laptop. So that's not that interesting. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to consider, okay, I've installed Tailscale on my laptop. So what's next? What do I do next? Well, let's go to step 2. Step 2 in the notebook is more or less what you've seen a million times in all of these notebooks. You just import the Fabric FabLib Manager libraries. It has a little, tells you that you're installed correctly. Hopefully because you're avid Fabric users, everything's configured already. You don't have to fight through that anymore. Then I need to create an experiment. And this says here is I need to create a key. So this is a key. This is a fake key. You can see it's just A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's not a real key. But we need to get a Tailscale auth key, and we need to paste it right here so the rest of our notebook can use that auth key. And this diagram here shows you to add the key name and check a couple boxes. So if you click on this admin console, it'll take you there. But if you go back to your Tailscale console, which I will move over here so we can have them both open at the same time, and I will show you how this works. Okay. So let's close this. Do this. Okay. So if we go over here to my Tailscale admin console, if I go to settings and then keys, this is where you can create your auth keys. And then this is a brand new account, so I haven't created any auth keys yet. So I'm going to go ahead and generate an auth key and then name it. I'm just going to name this Fabric. You can name it whatever you want. It's just so that you can remember which key is which. I'm going to tag it here, this little switch here, to make it reusable. And what this does is it allows me to use this key for more than one other devices. And since I'm going to use the same key for every machine, virtual machine in my slice, I want to reuse this key for all of the things. You have a little expiration date. I'll just leave it at the default. I'm going to make this ephemeral. So ephemeral means that when these VMs leave the network, it'll just remove them from the network, as opposed to like if your laptop, you might want to have it not ephemeral, so it remembers which one's your laptop every time you come back. And I'm going to just go ahead and say generate key. If you guys type really fast, you could probably use this key and hack into my network that I just created. Please don't do that. But I'm going to go here and copy this key. And I'm going to go back to my Jupyter notebook. And I'm going to just write this key right here. Right? Oops. I did it wrong. I'm going to have to create another key because I accidentally unpasted. So this is Fabric 2. Reusable, ephemeral, generate, copy, paste. Okay, so there's my key. So now what I'm going to do is run this cell, and this is just going to make a variable with that key in it. I'm going to get 4 random sites, although I'm not actually going to get random ones because I want to demonstrate a couple of properties. So I'm going to pick specific ones for myself. So I am going to pick UCSD. They're down in Dallas, New York, and Amsterdam. So I'm going to just basically picking this to get a geographic distribution, but UCSD is also IPv4, so I'm going to have a mix of IPv4 and v6 and show you that it still works, right? So set my sites. Then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to start this because this does take a minute. So now what we're doing is I ran the cell that's actually going to create the slice. Oops, actually, I want to stop that. I'm going to do this, make this VPN2, and I'm going to add cores equal 8. RAM equals 16, and disk equals 100, because I have some examples I want to show that needs a little bit more performance. Okay, so mine is going to be called VPN, Tailscale Mesh VPN 2, but that's okay. And there's probably another one that's booting right now as well. Hopefully that doesn't, we'll see if that might mess some things up. We'll see. Hold on. Okay, so as this is coming up, I'm going to show you what this is about. Okay, so if you look at this slice, we're starting this slice. What's going to happen here is I'm going to create this slice called Tailscale Mesh VPN 2. I'm going to, for each site in my list, there's 4 in my list, I'm going to add a node. It's going to be named after the site name 1. And then it's going to have these characteristics with this cores, RAM, disk, and that, and Ubuntu image, right? Then I'm going to use the FabNet, the add FabNet, to just add an automatic FabNet. So these are all going to have a data plane on FabNet. Nothing fancy, just a plain FabNet connection as their data plane. And then they'll also have their management plane network that will connect to via Tailscale. Because this is not necessary for Tailscale, but because of the demo I'm going to do a little bit later, I'm going to actually enable Docker on these images. And I'm going to do that by uploading this folder and then running this enable Docker script that will just turn Docker on, as you've probably seen before. And then this is the key part here. I'm going to say add postboot execute, and I'm going to put this here. So this, if you remember, if I go back over to my Tailscale console, put a download, and go to Linux, this is just the command you use to install Tailscale on a Linux machine. So what we're doing is saying add a postboot execute task that installs Tailscale. And so all of these things, add postboot upload, will upload that directory after the node is booted. Add postboot execute will enable Docker, and then it's going to install Tailscale on the machine after it's booted. And then finally, now we have this Tailscale command because we just installed Tailscale. We're going to say sudo Tailscale up and auth key, and we're going to pass in the auth key, which is the auth key that I created just a minute ago, right? So what this is going to do is create 4 VMs on those 4 different sites connected to FabNet, each of them connected to FabNet, each of them having Docker available, and each of them connected to Tailscale, right? So if I go back over here, go look at my list of machines, you can see some of these nodes are starting to come up. The way the postboot config works is that it waits till the whole slice is up, and then it goes through and runs the postboot tasks. So after it runs the postboot tasks, well, we should start seeing these nodes join my list of Tailscale machines that are in my admin console, right? So we have one more node. New York seems like it's slow to create its network, but we'll get there. Yeah. So this shouldn't take too much longer. So while we're doing this, I will get set up for the next phase. I have here my terminal window. Whoops. I'm going to create a new terminal window, also make it bigger, and drop it down here. Inside on my laptop here, so these terminal windows are on my laptop. These are not on a Fabric node at all. I'm going to go to desktop, and I have in here a Tailscale webinar folder. And inside that folder, I have a couple files. I have one 1 gigabyte file, one 10 gigabit file, a folder called file browser, and a folder called file node tools. So that these file browser and node tools are just the folders that are next to my notebook here. And these other files are for me to play with to show you some interesting file transfer, ways to transfer files from your laptop to your machine. All right, so my slice is up now. You can see it's running the postboot config threads now. And if you can see that UCSD is an IPv4 management network and the rest are IPv6. And you know that we could SSH using this command from Jupyter Hub, but not from my laptop necessarily. But I could do it from Jupyter Hub. We know that this key is the key that is inside of every virtual machine. And this SSH config file sets up the jumping through the bastion host and the key for the bastion host and such. So what we're going to try to do is make it so we don't have to use the bastion host at all, and we can SSH from my laptop using, and then that means we need this key, right? So I'm going to go over here, and if you remember, in this fabric config directory, you can see it's home, fabric work, fabric config slice key. That's the key that is inside of the Jupyter hub. That's the, or at least this is the private key you need to access it. All right. Oh, we can see some of these are done. So if we go back over here, we can see Amsterdam and Dallas and New York have joined my mesh VPN over here. But first, we're going to go and grab this key. We're just going to download it to my downloads directory. So I just downloaded it. Now it's on my laptop is that key, right? So that's the key that's inside the VM. Okay, let's put this back here. And you can see now that all of my machines are listed here in my admin console on my Tailscale. So all 5 of these machines, my laptop and the 4 Fabric virtual machines, are part of my Tailscale mesh VPN. All right, so now go back over to my terminal windows here. I'm going to show you some cool things. Okay, so things to know. One, each of these machines has an IP address, right? Those IP addresses are the IP addresses in my Tailscale VPN. So if I wanted to, I can copy this. This is Amsterdam, right? So, and I should be able to now ping that virtual machine over my Tailscale network directly from my laptop, even though it's in Amsterdam and protected behind the firewalls and the bastion host and all this stuff. So now I have a WireGuard connection from my laptop to that machine that goes directly to the machine, right? Another cool thing you can do that Tailscale takes care of for you, you don't even have to just use the IP addresses. So if I wanted to, I could say ping Amsterdam 1, and that will also work because it knows it by name. Since I'm connected to this mesh VPN, it will resolve those domain names for me. And the same works for like all these machines. So I can go here and UCSD. Right, so UCSD is IPv4, but Amsterdam is IPv6, and my laptop is IPv4 because we're at Renzi. When I'm at home, it's on IPv6 and v4, and it still all works, right? So this all just is taken care of for you. You don't have to worry about it. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy, or actually I'll move that key that I downloaded, right? Slice key. I'm going to move it to here, and then I'm going to make it so that it has permissions that SSH won't complain about. And then what I can do, if I make this a little bit bigger, I can SSH using this key, right, to UCSD 1. It's an Ubuntu machine, so that's the Ubuntu at UCSD 1, right? Oops. I did this earlier, so I need to mess with my known host file. So if I just remove my /ssh/known hosts, now it forgets that I've done this before, and it'll let me in to UCSD. So now I'm inside my UCSD virtual machine, and you saw that I didn't even use the bastion host, right? I jumped over the WireGuard connection that is managed by the mesh VPN. So you look here, you can see this. I'm going to now move this over so we can see our Jupyter notebook, and I can mess with these terminal windows at the same time. I'm going to show you a couple more cool things that you can do. Okay, so now we're right here. Sorry, I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. We need to step 3 is SSH directly from your laptop, get the key, SSH directly to it, and it works. We can see that it works. We can do some cool things. We now have a Tailscale command that exists. So if you say Tailscale, you can see that there's actually some commands that you can run. If you were observant, you'll see that Tailscale up with the auth key. That's one of these commands. So Tailscale up connects to Tailscale, logging in if needed. You can also do Tailscale down, which will disconnect from Tailscale or set some privileges, or log in or log out. There's a whole bunch of different commands way beyond the scope of what I'm doing today, but I suggest you familiar with this and learn more about it, because there's some cool things that Tailscale will do that I'm not going to teach you today. One interesting one though is I can say Tailscale status, and this actually shows all the different machines that are in my network, right? So these are the same machines that are in my Tailscale console. And in fact, if you wanted to, I could say ping Dallas 1 from here, and I'm now pinging from UCSD 1 to Dallas 1 over my mesh VPN. Now, like I said, you now have this connection here. If you come over here, you can see that Dallas 1 is also on the data plane. So if I wanted to, I could ping this machine. This is also Dallas 1 on the data plane. This is where you want to do the experiment. The mesh VPN is where you want to do management of your network, because your laptop will also be on it. So just know that these machines are all connected with 2 different networks now, and you got to be a little aware of that. One's for management, one's for data plane. Okay, so that's really cool. So we can now see all these connections, right? And you can see now there's a connection from UCSD to Dallas, and there wasn't before, if you noticed. And that's because when I started to use that connection, that's when Tailscale created the WireGuard link. So it was created on demand. So I don't always have WireGuard connections to all the peers, but when I need them, it'll be created for me, right? Okay, so now let's see what we can do here. So now if I go to desktop Tailscale, we can do other things. So what if I wanted to not SSH the machine, but copy a file into it? I can just do secure copy -I, my slice key, my 1G file, and I can say Ubuntu at UCSD1 : dot, and now this will copy that file from my laptop to my UCSD machine over my Tailscale mesh VPN, right? So you see what's happening here is I'm able to move files in and out from my laptop to my machines on Fabric directly, or but through these WireGuard tunnels. So in a minute and a half, this is going to be done, and we'll be able to use this. So now I'm doing, I can do SSH, I can do secure copy, I could use any other tool I wanted to move files as well. I'm mostly just waiting for this file to finish. You can see I'm getting 10 megabytes per second, which is, quite good for a management network. Then what I can do, while we're waiting for that to finish, I can move on to the next step here, and I can install a service on my VM and consume that service from the outside. So here I'm going to go install a web server, right? So I'm going to say sudo apt-get install or update. So this is on my UCSD machine. I'm going to install Apache 2. So that's the common web server. I'm going to turn the Apache web server on. And then what's going to happen is if I open a new web browser on my laptop, remember this is a web browser on my laptop, and I go to http://ucsd1, it takes me to this default Apache Ubuntu machine, and it says it works, which is really cool, right? So now I have a web server on my VM that I'm using from outside my VM. I can sudo sc2 minus, and then if you look here, there's some code here that'll do this for everybody, and I'm going to cheat and find the file name because I forget what it is. So I'm going to remove the file that is the website that was there. I'm going to open the file. I'm going to say, hello from UCSD1 via Tailscale. Right? I'm going to save this file, and we'll go back to our website, and we'll hit reload. And we'll see that And we can see hello from UCSD1 via Tailscale. So this is an actual web server on my VM that I'm accessing from my laptop, even though it's inside a Fabric behind the bastion heads, behind all the security, and I'm doing it safely. Right. Another thing you can do, I can copy this 1 gigabyte file. Whoops. Sudo copy file 1G to that same directory. And then I can sudo chmod, get the permissions set right. So group another plus readable file 1G. And now if I wanted to, I could come up here and I could go to file 1G. And now it wants to know if I want to download that file. So here, I just downloaded it. So now I'm downloading that 1G file to my laptop, to my downloads directory, even though it's on a Fabric VM behind the bastion host, behind everything, right? And I'm doing it over this Tailscale mesh VPN. Okay. Hopefully, if that's not impressive enough, then what we're going to do is, you notice I installed all this by hand. Instead of doing that, you can see that we can just use these fabload commands to install all this for you. So we're going to go ahead and just install Apache and create a little website on all 4 of these machines and show you that they can all work. This is done just by scripting inside the notes. How much time do I have left? I just want to make sure I'm okay. I think I'm good. I want to get to the chameleon bonus. All right. And the other thing I'll do while I'm here is I can do secure copy minus I minus R file browser to Ubuntu at UCSD D1. What this is going to do is copy that file browser directory, the whole directory, to that UCSD machine. And we'll use that in just a minute. So you can see now Apache has been installed, and then it created a little website, and then I'm printing out the URL that I would use to access them all. So if I go here and I click on HTTP NUI1, it's actually going to open hello from NUI1 access through Tailscale that was automatically created for me. And you can do something more interesting. I'm just putting simple websites there so that you can see the point here. Okay, so now what we have is Apache running on all 4 of these sites all over the world. IPv6, IPv4, doesn't matter. They're all behind bastion host, doesn't matter, because I have my mesh VPN that lets me get into it, right? Okay, so lastly, and this is a really cool thing that I'm going to show you, is this run a file browser and transfer the files. So what I just did, I'm going to show you how to do this by hand, and then I'll show you how to do it automatic, just like I did with the web browser. So I just copied this folder called file browser to my UCSD machine. You look here, I have file browser, this folder. If you look inside this folder, it's just a Docker compose file. And if you remember right, I installed Docker on all these VMs automatically using the post-config scripts. And if you look here, the Docker compose file, it's a pretty simple one. It just runs this file browser Docker image, gets it from Docker Hub, and then it runs it on port 8989, and it mounts a few volumes on the host, and then I'll show you what this does. So if I do Docker compose up minus D to detach minus D, do it. Okay, it's pulling a Docker image from Docker Hub and starting this Docker container. So if I now do Docker PS, you can see this file browser is running on port 8989, and it's healthy, and it's been up for 6 seconds and so forth. So now what I can do, this is really cool. I open up a new web browser, and I go to HTTP UCSD1 :8989. It's going to bring me to this file browser service that's running on my VM at UCSD. I'm gonna do 89. The passwords for this is admin, admin, admin. Don't use these passwords if you're doing this yourself. This is just for the demo, because keep in mind, these machines are all on Fabnet v4 as well. So someone can get in from Fabnet v4. So set your passwords. You'll protect it from the greater internet, but not from the rest of the networks within Fabric. So you have to be a little bit worried about security, but you don't have to worry about everyone on the internet. So when I log in here, what this file browser thing is, it's basically a tool that lets you use your machine as if it was like a cloud storage system. So you can see here, I have my file 1G is here. It was created 7 minutes ago. I have my node tools and my file browser, a bunch of bash things and some stuff that was already there. I can also, if I do this, say open dot. So this is, oops. This is just my, on my desktop, this is the Finder window of the folder that's on my desktop. If I wanted to, I could take, like maybe I take my slice key and I can drop it over here, and it's actually going to upload my slice key to there. Or I can take the 10 gig file and upload the 10 gig file over here, and you can see it's uploading the 10 gig file. Or I can take like my bash RC from here and I can drop it back over here. Maybe that's not how that works. I think you just have to say download. Yeah. So if I do download, it'll download my bash RC file from this window. So this is basically a tool that lets you access your virtual machine on Fabric behind the Bastion host, behind everything, but like it's like a Google Drive, right? It even does some cool things, like if I wanted to maybe go into my file browser directory and I didn't, there's a typo in that Docker Compose, or I wanted to edit it somehow, I could open up that Docker Compose file inside my UCSD virtual machine, and I can edit it. And like maybe the next time I run this, I want this to be 8990, right? So I want to change the port that it's using, right? And then I can hit save and close this. And now if I did cat Docker Compose, you can see it's 8990, which was edited through this browser window here. So yeah, this is pretty cool. Now you can move files in and out of Fabric quite easily, right? And then also this tool here, you notice the script to actually bring it all up everywhere is pretty simple. So I'm just going to run that. It's going to go through all my nodes, and it's going to bring up this file browser and all the nodes. On UCSD, it was already up, but like, so now Dallas is going to come up now, and I should be able to click on Dallas. And this is a different file browser. This one is on Dallas, admin, and now I'm in my Dallas nodes file browser, and I can move files around and edit them and whatever else I want to do. So hopefully this is super useful to you. That's the end of the Fabric portion of this. I'm going to show you one more really cool trick that hopefully some of you will like. Okay, so the last thing in this notebook here, I'll just tell you really quick something about this. This is actually how you delete these slices. One thing that you'll notice, or you use this, is if you run the command tailscale logout, it'll remove your machine from your admin console. And if you don't, it'll leave it there for some amount of time before it times out. And so if you run this multiple times in a row with the same names, and you don't use the logout, you'll get multiple nodes in here with the same name, and Tailscale will rename them to unique names, but then you won't be able to access them as directly as you want. So you probably want to make sure when you close your machines to log out of Tailscale, or you're gonna have to come into your Tailscale admin console and do a bunch of cleanup. Well, it's up to you. You'll do it wrong one time, probably no more than that, because it's kind of a pain. Okay, so that's the end of that. I'm gonna jump over here and show you something extra special. So I know this is a Fabric tutorial, but I work a lot on Chameleon as well. And a lot of the things we're doing with Chameleon we're able to create slices that span both Fabric and Chameleon and other test beds. And I'm going to show you how Tailscale works with Chameleon and Fabric at the same time. and makes it really easy. So if you come over to Chameleon, this isn't going to be a Chameleon tutorial. I'm just going to briefly show you some things. So if you go over here to Chameleon, and I look at my instances on Chameleon, so I have 2 machines I've already brought up on Chameleon. Chameleon is a big cloud resource that gives you bare metal nodes. I started these 4 hours ago or so. What I can do, there's two really cool things I want to show you. One is if I want to launch an instance on Chameleon, I can name it. I'm going to name this one Chameleon 3. I'm going to use a reservation that I already made. I'm going to pick the source Ubuntu 222. So that's the image basically. And then this is the cool part. So under networks on Chameleon, we did a bunch of work to do this. There is a network that comes free just in your account called FabNet v4. So FabNet v4 is actually the Fabric layer 3 network. So if you choose on Chameleon, shared net or shared LAN, you get the default regular Chameleon networks. But if you choose FabNet v4, you're actually going to get a machine that is on a Fabric network, and you can combine your Chameleon nodes and your Fabric nodes by just launching it and choosing this. This is literally the only thing you have to do is choose that and launch it. So I've launched this. It takes 10+ minutes to do it, so that's why I'm going to use these pre-compiled, pre-baked ones. You notice here, I'm going to show you something very cool. So here's my UCSD machine. And UCSD machine is on FabNet v4. So I should be able to ping from my UCSD machine my Chameleon machine. So this is me pinging from UCSD Fabric VM to my Chameleon bare metal machine over the Fabric data plane. So this is over the data plane of Fabric connecting Chameleon and Fabric. So this shows you the power of how you can create experiments that span Fabric and Chameleon and other testbeds. But it gets a little tricky on how to manage all of this in one place. But I'm going to show you this trick. So the other thing, if you know about Chameleon, so these IP addresses, like I said, are on the Fabric network. So they're not available from the outside world. Even if you use the regular shared net, you can't get to Chameleon nodes from the outside world. You have to do this thing where you add what they called a floating IP, which is a public-facing IP address. There's a limited number of them. You have to reserve them. They sometimes run out. And when you do that, you're on the public internet, and the bad guys can just hack on you. And you have to be careful. This is the main way things on Chameleon get kind of hacked into, is people putting things on the public-facing floating IPs that are unsecure. And they've been done a bunch of work to like have some security policies and things like that. But no matter what, you can expose yourself to the bad stuff. And also, but keep in mind, Fabric or floating IPs sometimes run out. You also have to reserve them. And you know, so if you could do this without using a floating IP, this would be great. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So if anyone's used Chameleon, this will be a cool trick that you'll know. So I'm going to go here to this Chameleon 1. This is my bare metal node on Chameleon 1. It's at University of Chicago /Argonne. I have no access to this from the public internet. It has no public-facing IP address or any way to get into it via the public-facing internet. But I can open this console, and I can get just a raw console through the web browser on it. It takes a little minute to configure itself. And while it does that, I'm going to drink some water. And this machine is an Ubuntu 22 machine, just like all the others that I used on Fabric. And what we're going to be able to do, once it gives me the console. Okay, so this is just a console on my machine, my Fabric or my Chameleon machine. If I go back here and I go up to my command here and I grab the command to install Tailscale and I paste it here, I could just run I can install Tailscale on my Chameleon machine, right? So that's what I'm doing here. It takes a minute to do it. Probably have to scroll down so you can see it all. Now, of course, once this is installed, I have access to the Tailscale service. I can say Tailscale status, and you can see it's logged out. So what I need to do is turn on Tailscale. So I'm going to go Tailscale auth key, And I'm just going to grab the same auth key that I used for the other one. And I'm going to run it. And you can guess what that's going to do. So if I come over here, I now have Chameleon 1 in on my Fabric VPN, my Fabric or the Tailscale Mesh VPN. And now I can tell Tailscale status. And you can see all these machines here, right? So what I could do now, if I grab my other terminal window, I need the key that is on this Chameleon machine, and I chose it to be a key that I use called my Chameleon key. I happen to have it on my laptop, so I can say SSH minus I dot SSH, my Chameleon key. And then I can say CC because that's the username on a Chameleon machine. And then I say Chameleon 1, right? And now I'm logged into my Chameleon node from my laptop without having a floating IP on my Chameleon node. And this machine can ping UCSD1, which is my Fabric machine. It's doing this over this isolated mesh VPN. At the same time, these machines are actually on the same Fabric network. So if I looked here and I said IP address list, and I can find my Fabric. This is my IP address on Fabnet v4. So I should be able to, from Chameleon, ping my UCSD node over the Fabric data plane. So this is a Chameleon node on the Fabric data plane connected to another Fabric node, but they're also connected with my personal mesh VPN. And of course, because I did this, now you can see that there's some WireGuard links that are up. I think that's about all the time I have. I will go back to here. I'm sure there's a lot of questions. Recap. So I will go full screen here and I'll show you the recap, just one slide. This is what we did, right? So we created a set of VMs on Fabric connected with the data plane. In this case, we used Fabnet v4. But we created a Tailscale dedicated mesh VPN that connected those machines together and connected your external laptop, kept the external attackers out of the way, and never used the Bastion host for your management plane. You use the Bastion host to set up the management plane, but then once you do, it's out of the way. And we were able to connect all of this directly to a Chameleon node. So the Chameleon node is connected to both the VPN and the data plane in a very simple way. This is pretty cool. So now you can put services on any of your Fabric VMs, your Chameleon nodes, what have you, make them face your VPN and access them from your external machine and use them. And it hides all the complexities of IPv4 and v6. And this is what most of you want to do. All right. We're going to go to the Q&A section. And I think Brittany's going to help out with that, maybe. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So like Paul said, now we will move to the Q&A session. Feel free to add questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen if they arise while we're in this portion of the presentation. So the first question is comparable overhead tailscale versus traditional SSH tunnel setup. Is there a noticeable difference?
So not really. I mean, some of them, depending on where your laptop is, you can get very different results with both the SSH tunnels. Keep in mind, the SSH tunnels have to go through our Bastion host, so they're going to be bottlenecked by that. Also, Tailscale does its best to create peer-to-peer connections directly between the different nodes, but sometimes it can't. And when it does, it'll put a little repeater node inside of its network that repeats for you, and you'll get various performance when this happens. So jumping between IPv4 and v6, you sometimes get a performance hit and so forth. You
Okay,
want me to answer that question that came in on the Q&A thing or no?
so we have somebody who's raised their hand, so I'm gonna go ahead and allow them to talk to ask the question.
Oh, hi. Am I audible?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry. Uh, so my question is there any limitation with the Tailscale cloud services? Do I have to pay it later on, or I can add any number of uh, machines or something like that? Is there any?
Okay, yeah, so that's a very good question. So when I first started using Tailscale, like maybe more than a year ago, they limited you to like 10 machines, but they upped that to 100 machines. So if you need more than 100 machines, you'll have to pay a little extra. But if you can stick under 100, you'll be all right. So that's I mean, that seems like it's probably enough for most things. And if you need more, you can pay for it. But if you're doing something that big, you probably have some purpose behind it. Another thing that's interesting is that when I started using it, there's if you do this using your personal Gmail account, you can create your own VPN. I first started using my Rinsey Gmail account, and what the interesting thing was because my Rinsey Gmail account, they know that that's Rinsey, or Tailscale does. So I was the first person at Rinsey to do this. So now I sort of own Rinsey's Tailscale VPN, and other people that want to join it, I have to like allow them to do it, and it's supposed to cost money if they do. So I have to go talk to them and tell them, just use your private Gmail account, you'll be all right. But the thing that's interesting about this is that you can have, like if you're a larger organization or even a small organization, you can have multiple users using the same Tailscale mesh VPN. And recently, Tailscale just allowed us, so with the free tier, you can do 3 people that way. So if you had a small Fabric project for free, you can have 3 of you sharing the same beacon. So there's a whole slew of other things you can pay for. Like Tailscale is pretty cool, actually. Yep. Did that answer your question? I guess, is he still there or no?
No, he's been moved back down. But he does have I think a follow-up question. So we'll allow this one follow-up question and then we'll move to the question in the Q&A box.
Oh yeah, one last question.
Sure.
Talking about the chameleon, talking with the chameleon. So I'm interested in the chameleon cheat edge. So is it still is it possible to like connect like Fabric and the edge devices at this point of time, or it's only the Chicago's like bare metal machines?
It's only the big ones for now, but we have thoughts on like extending it to that. Yeah. So like wait for it. Ask the question on the chameleon nodes. Like the more people that ask for it, probably the sooner it'll happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So the next question we have is there any restriction or limitation using Tailscale cloud services?
I think that was the same question. Maybe? No? Wait. Is it?
It came in through the Q&A, so it may have. Oh,
I think
yeah,
it was,
it is.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. All right. So the next one is, do I need to inform my organization before using Tailscale?
No, you don't. I guess I sort of already answered that a bit from the previous question. If you use your organizational account, they probably think that you're part of that organization, and they will want your whole organization to be part of it. But if you use your own personal Gmail account or create a brand new Gmail account or a GitHub account, you can just yeah, you don't have to tell anyone. You can just use it.
All right, great. Next question. How does this work with the IPv6 versus IPv4 Fabric sites?
So it does create direct peer-to-peer connections. I know that it does its best. So Tailscale does its best to try to create direct peer-to-peer links between it with no bumps in the way. But I also know that when it can't do that, they actually have repeater services that you can actually see right here. And you're still sharing my screen, right? You can see, yeah. When I did this Tailscale status, it actually says between this machine, which I think this is my laptop, and then the chameleon nodes. Between the chameleon node and my laptop, it actually relayed between New York City for some reason. But you can see between UCSD and chameleon, it went direct. So you can actually see in the status like if it's being relayed or not. But if you do the relay, it'll be probably a little slower. Maybe there's some bandwidth limitations. I don't know. But generally I find it to be very slick and just works.
Excellent. And does Tailscale differ if you work on Mac versus Windows?
Don't work on Windows, so I don't really know, but I think it's all the same. I think you just have an application you install, and really when you install it on your Windows machine, you're just connecting that machine to your Tailscale VPN. And so when you want to use your Tailscale VPN, you go to the admin console, which is a web browser anyway, and that's exactly the same regardless. Yeah, so I think it's more or less the same.
Okay. How does Tailscale compare to other VPN solutions?
Okay, I kind of mentioned it before that like normal VPNs are like your organization sets this up and you connect in it from the outside. And this is kind of the same thing, except your VPN sits sort of in the cloud and you can connect to it from anywhere. One really kind of important thing, so I use Tailscale to connect to some things at home. And one reason I like it is that if you want to create like a VPN at your house, or if you want to create a VPN at your like business organization, the only way to do that is to open up a port that faces the internet so people can connect to it from the outside. And with the mesh VPNs, you don't have to do that because the connections are always initiated from the inside to the outside. So there's no service that you have to have on your Fabric network that allows you to connect in. Everybody connects to the Tailscale service, and then Tailscale does matchmaking. Of course, you have to trust Tailscale a little bit, so that's a trade-off. But it's what makes this possible on Fabric, because you don't need to have a service that faces the outside world ever, like even to initiate.
Thank you. Another question for you. When I am sending data from one machine to another, is it using the data plane or Tailscale's network?
You have to be very careful and know which one you're using. If you're connecting to other machines on the Tailscale network, it'll be using the Tailscale network if you use that set of IPs. But if you use IPs that are on your data plane, it'll be on the data plane. So like one thing you have to make sure of here is that you know which side is which when you're doing your experiments, because you probably don't want to use the management network at all, Tailscale or otherwise, for your experiments. But you have to be careful. That's true even if you don't use Tailscale.
Thank you. We still got a couple more here. When you run the Tailscale server, is it working from the cloud or the local computer?
So it's a tricky question. So like I kind of explained a little bit in one of the other questions. So the Tailscale service in the cloud is really just the matchmaker. So all your different devices connect to Tailscale, say, hey, I'd like to connect to this network. And then Tailscale helps organize the peer-to-peer direct links between your VPNs that are guarded by WireGuard. So in that sense, you're not going through the Tailscale cloud most of the time. Most of the time you're going directly with these peer-to-peer links, although sometimes the connection is not possible. So you go through this, like they say, this relay through New York here. Yeah, I don't know. And you can see which you can see when it's being relayed or not. So it's important to know that.
All right. Next question. How will Tailscale help my experiment on Fabric?
So the main things is, it's mostly for management. So what you really want to do with this is use it to very easily copy files in and out of your experiment, as well as run commands that will control your experiment. And what it really enables that really is really difficult to do normally, is you can stand up services inside of Fabric that you can then consume from outside of Fabric. And a lot of these might be monitoring services like Grafana or something like that. But also, it's, copying files in and out is important, especially if you want to try to avoid going through the bash notes while doing it.
All right. And then right now, our last question, unless another one comes in, is I need to have a service on the public internet. Can Tailscale solve this problem?
So the whole point of Tailscale is to not put things on the public internet. In my mind, and trying to deal with people that are trying to get IPs on the public internet with Fabric, there's only a couple reasons why you would need that. And one would be if you need a service that is available to anyone on the public internet. And generally, we're not really the right place to provide that service. And another would be if you wanted to have, if there's some service out there, like the one example I can think of is sometimes people have certificates that need to be authenticated from a certificate authority, and that certificate authority needs to connect to your service. And if that service is inside of Fabric and that certificate authority can't be the client and connect to it to authenticate your certificate, then you're going to have a problem. That's about the only reasons I can think of for needing to have an actual public IP. And is really so that anybody else on the internet can connect to you. And Tailscale won't solve that problem for you. But the whole point is to maintain isolation, I guess.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. So I just want to give you one more thank you to our speaker, Paul Ruth. And in addition to our presenter, we would like to acknowledge the behind the scenes team who are listed in the next slide, who worked diligently to bring this webinar to production. So we appreciate all of those people. And thank you to the audience for your participation in today's webinar. In addition to a recording of this webinar, we will also be emailing everyone who has registered a list of resources. So the slide deck will be shared along with a link to our Slack channel and Connect with Us form. And we hope that you will reach out to the Fabric team for questions or support. Our webinars next month are Fabric 101, which is the Hello Fabric webinar series, and it will be on Monday, July 15th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And we will have a second webinar, Stitching Together Innovations with Fabric Users, on Tuesday, July 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Both of these webinars are geared towards new users, so we would appreciate it if you could forward the information to the new users in your community. As a final reminder, please submit your Fabric matrix and make sure your project abstract in the portal is up to date, as we will use that information for outreach, including our website. So thank you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.